Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Mamre,
And we are starting the second of the three parshiot, the three Torah portions that deal with the life of Abraham and his family. So, famous, famous chapters, famous stories, I would say, if it's fair to say. vaYera Elav Hashem, the Lord appeared to him, be'elone Mamre. This word Elon sometimes is translated as terebinth. You'll find that very often. I believe the term terebinth, it doesn't necessarily refer to a specific species of trees, but it means a tree with a very, very wide trunk, I think. Elon is also, I believe, or maybe alon is the word in modern Hebrew to mean an oak tree. So however you want to do it, but it's some form of tree, right? And these must have been some clump that was well established as a landmark of Mamre. Mamre is one of Abraham's confederates. He's been mentioned already. So, Vahu Yoshev, and he, that is Abraham, was sitting petach ha'ohel, at the entrance of the tent, kechom hayom, in the heat of the day. So there are a few things then to unpack in the details given in this particular sentence. Let's take a look. Torah Temiah. vaYera Elav Hashem. The Lord appeared to him. Mikan. From this fact that we read about God appearing to him, Shemidat HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it is one of the qualities of the Holy One, blessed be He, levaker cholim, to visit people who are ill. People who are ill. And that's in Tractate Sota, page 14a. Samach, so the question is, well, on what basis? Why would we say such a thing, right? So, Samach al hadrasha shebesamuch. So he's relying on the next little interpretation that we're going to give. She'akadosh baruch hu ba levakro, that the reason why the Holy One, blessed be He, came to visit him, why the mention of this visit, beheyoto chole, because he was ill, right? He was out of commission in a way, la'achar hamilah, after having gone through circumcision, right? At the age of 99. I think it was 99. I think it was 99, right? So he was trying to recover. And so God came to visit him, pay a sick call. V'ashma'inan zeh, and we learn this out, right? Sheyilamdu b'nei adam, right? That people, human beings, lehidabek, right? We have this general principle that people should cling b'midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the qualities of the Holy One, blessed be He. The Latin term imitatio Dei. We should imitate God in these kinds of ways. Ukemoshe katuv, and as is written, the Parshat Re'eh, in the Torah portion of Re'eh, that's in the book of Deuteronomy, it says there, Acharei Elohim telechu, you shall follow God, right? The Lord your God, you shall walk, you shall follow. Uvo tebakun, right? And in him you should cling. Vidarshina. So that's the passage in Deuteronomy. Vidarshina, and we interpret that. V'chi, so when we look at that passage, it says, V'chi efshar lidabek b'shchina. Are you saying it's possible to actually cling to the divine presence? V'halo kativ, and isn't it written elsewhere, Ki Hashem Elohecha esh ochlahu? It says, because the Lord your God is a devouring fire. You want to cling to devouring fires? So what are we saying? How do we resolve this contradiction? Ella, but what it means is hidabek bemidotav. Cling to his qualities. Mahu mevaker cholim, just as he visits the sick, etc. V'yein sham, and check it out. Lefanenu ba'arucha. It's there. He goes into length at that point in discussing this particular drush in Parshat Re'eh. So that's the reason, right? God did it. It was a quality. We should do it as well. Visiting people who are sick is a divine quality, and we should try and imitate it as well and emulate it. Again, the general principles of helping those who are in difficult situations and using that if we're in a better position, we should have compassion, essentially, right? So, vaYera Elav Hashem, the Lord appeared to him. Amar Rabbi Chana Rabbi Chanina, said Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Chanina, Oto Hayom, that particular day that God visited Abraham, Shlishi Lemilato Haya, it was the third day after his circumcision. Uva HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Holy One, blessed be He, came, Lish'ol Lishlomo, to inquire of his health. In other words, to pay a sikul. And this is in Baba Metzia, Tractate Baba Metzia, Pei Vav, that's page 86 on the B side of the page. Which raises some questions, which I hope you have already, which is, how did he know it's the third day? Doesn't say it, right? Okay. Ki vayom hashlishi. So here's the explanation. The reason is that on the third day, hachusha meruba, that very often, at least this is the experience, you can tell me medically if there's any validation of this, but that on the third day after surgery, that's when you feel the weakest. K'moshe katuv b'parshat Vayishlach. It mentions this actually in the Parsha of Vayishlach, that's later on in Genesis. It has to do with that incident regarding Dinah, right, and Shechem, etc. And I don't want to give the whole story at this point, but basically we're talking about people, adults, having to endure circumcision, and it mentions after that, Vayhi bayom hashlishi, it says on the third day, Beheyotam koavim, when they were in agony, when these people were in agony. The Tam Hadrasha, so, and the reason for this interpretation, Katav Bechidushe Agodot, the reason for this particular drasha, that's what's going on here. In other words, it doesn't say he was paying a sikul, doesn't say God was paying a sikul, doesn't say anything about the third day, it doesn't say he was doing it because Abraham was recovering from his circumcision, right? But there is a wonderful, wonderful commentary at the back of the Vilna Talmud, Chidushe Agadot, right? It's a beautiful commentary where the rabbi the rabbi involved, his name is escaping me for the moment, but he has both a commentary and a discussion of both halacha, the halacha mentioned in the Gemara, and also the Agadah. He gives some very beautiful and insightful comments there. Midelo matzinu. So why so? Midelo matzinu shediber Hakadosh Baruch Hu imo bera'ayon zeh. We don't find that the Holy One He spoke to him in this appearance, kamo ba'alma, as in general. In other words, in describing this particular revelation of God to Abraham, it's different, right? The way it's set up is different from all the other ways in which God appears to Abraham. The imkain, and if this is the reason that it has this unique quality to it, le'ezu matara nir elav. So, it says he actually visited, right? And regardless, with the three angels. So ela levakro. So he must have come to visit him, right? That it should be in the sense of a visit and not just simply a revelation of divine word. Adkan, and that's how the Chidushe Agadot explains it. V'gam yesh lomar. And not only that, you could argue, you could say, dedayek midalokativ, that he's looking at the language and noticing, right? Midalokativ, it doesn't say vaYera Hashem el Avraham. The fact that it doesn't say the Lord appeared to Abraham, it said Ella Elav. It just says he appeared to him, bechinui stam, with a general pronoun. It doesn't say he appeared to Abraham. It says he appeared to him. Shma mina, and from this we can derive, right? We can deduce shesamich ha'inyan hakodem, that it's dependent on the previous subject. In other words, you use a pronoun, if you've already introduced the specific person that you're talking about. You can, otherwise, just talking about him leaves you with a strange situation of a question. But if you've mentioned the person, then you can say him. And it does say the Lord appeared to him. U'makativ. So what was the first thing? What was the thing that preceded it? Makativ lamala mizeh. What's written regarding the previous thing? B'samuch, right next to it. Be'etzem hayom. This is the sentence, right? Be'etzem hayom nimul Avraham. Right? In that same day, Abraham was circumcised. V'darish, and so he's able to interpret shenira elav b'davar hashayach le'oto hanyan, that the reason why God appeared to him in a matter that was related to that particular subject, the inyan hamilah, in other words, circumcision. V'hainu sheba levakro, and so from this you can conclude that God came to visit him. Any thoughts, any comments before I move on to the third statement here? Okay. I move on. Kachom hayom, in the heat of the day. My kocham hayom, kachom hayom. What do we mean, kachom hayom? And as the heat of the day, or like the heat of the day. Amar Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina, said Rabbi Chama, in the son of Rabbi Chanina. By the way, notice above the previous statement was also said in the name of the same person, right? Oto hayom shlishi lemilato haya. That day was the third day of his circumcision. Hotzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so the Lord, the Holy One, blessed be He, took out Chama, the son, minar kita, from its sheath, kedei shelo yatriach oto tzadik ba'orchim, so that that righteous person that's referring to Abraham should not be troubled by visitors. Right? We know that Abraham and Sarah, right, were very hospitable, and so God made it extra hard so that people wouldn't be traveling that day. They did not have air-conditioned camels or air-conditioned cars or air-conditioned donkeys. Okay? So there'd be fewer passers-by. We're going to see that, of course, in the Torah Temiah in a moment. Okay, let's take a look. Ritzono lomar, and what he's trying to say is, shemipnei chom hashemesh, that on account of the heat of the sun, right? Lo yiyu ovrim v'shavim mitzuyim. There would not be too many passers-by. We wouldn't find too many passers-by. Uve midrashim. Having said that, right, we see that in the midrashim, ita tam yitziat hachama, there's another reason given besides the one we just gave for the fact that the sun was shining so brightly and warmly. Mipnei shehachum, and there the midrashim it says on account of the fact that heat yafeh lemaka, that this heat helps. It makes having to deal with the wound more comfortable. It's good for wounds, basically, is what it's saying. Different reason. V'ien ba'avodah zara kaf chet, and I believe this is Sof Amud Bet. He says, look at the tractate Avodah Zara, page 28, at the end of the B side of the page, Uva Rashi Sham, and Rashi's commentary there in Avodah Zara. And regarding this particular explanation as to why God made it so warm, right, there are more supports. There are other supports of this idea. Because in fact, there were guests, Right? That's exactly what happened. The three angels showed up. Right? Here we've just been given an explanation, this first explanation saying that God made it so hot so there wouldn't be guests, and now we have guests. So seems more likely that the reason, right, was to help Abraham heal, that was the reason, or make him more comfortable in the process of recovering from his circumcision. Afki ha'agada yash, let's make sure, ha'agada yashva zot. Let's see, I'm sorry. I want to make sure I'm reading this. Right, okay. Even though, okay, so this particular Agadah about, I believe, oh, I see. All right, I think it resolves the contradiction. He's saying this Agadah, and I think he's referring to the one about the sun healing, right? And the fact that here we're saying God's intent was that there wouldn't be passers-by, and here there were passers-by, right? So the way in which this Agadah resolves this contradiction, Shira'ah HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Holy One basically he saw, Shaya Mitzta'er, that in fact he saw that Abraham was upset, Al Mini'at Orchim, the fact that he didn't have visitors. In other words, Abraham just loved to be able to extend hospitality, and now that there weren't people in which he could show that hospitality, he was upset about it. Okay, so God saw that Abraham was upset about it. And for this reason, God arranged for guests. So in other words, in order to be consistent with that first reason, that the reason God made it so hot was that there wouldn't be guests, the fact that God then saw that Abraham was upset that there weren't guests, and so God sent him guests. Aval lefi tam hamidrash, right? But according to the explanation, the Yitziat HaChama haita letachlit acheret. But if in fact the midrash that explains that the reason why God made the day so warm was in order to heal Abraham, to make him feel more comfortable, beloved achit necha. We don't need that explanation about Abraham being upset. We don't need it if we're saying that the second explanation that we gave was sufficient. It was good enough. And I think this is a good place for us to pause for our next, before we give another lesson. So we have some lovely discussion here about interpreting this verse. So I'll mark that, and I'm going to stop the share and hope that you may have some comments to make. Yes.
I was wondering, three angels came to visit
Yes.
Abraham. The purpose of those angels was to make sure that he will have a child. And so that's the three visitors he's ever had. Now, I don't understand why he has a brother. I don't know how many siblings Abraham had, but I think he had a brother and a nephew that went along with him, with God. But his dad, Abraham's dad, didn't go along with Abraham and God. I don't know why. I think his dad's name was Terah or something like that. And he didn't go along with Abraham. I mean, you would think that the father would go along with Abraham. Abraham had some brothers and sisters, I suppose. I don't see why they didn't go along with him either.
Well, it's an interesting thought. They remained in Padan Aram, or they remained back in Babylonia. Mead, did you want to respond?
No, I have to sign off. I have errands to run. It's mid-morning here, and the sun is shining.
Okay.
So have a good
Dr.
day.
Take care.
Right,
well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. So Harlan, they did not want to go along on this journey and become nomads. I can tell you that moving around from town to town and living a nomadic life is not fun. Moving is not an enjoyable thing. Having to pack up all your goods, it also means that you have to limit the number of possessions that you have. I can also tell you that it's not easy. It actually mentions that in some of the Midrashim. And essentially, Abraham's family remained where they were. And essentially what happened was that Lot, Abraham's nephew, his father died.
Oh,
Lot's father, again, Abraham's brother,
yeah.
I think it was Haran, died. And so Sarah, I believe, insisted that he take Lot with them. And that's the reason why Lot went along with them.
Okay. Okay.
But
That's-
essentially, Lot was not in a situation where had he stayed and his father was deceased, that it would have been a good situation for him.
oh,
That's why he went along.
okay.
Right.
Was Lot a young boy then?
We aren't told what Lot's age was, but at this particular story where he will be introduced, he will in fact, of course, be introduced again or reintroduced. He is married and has older daughters who are married. So
Oh,
I don't think he may well have been younger than Abraham. After all, Abraham was 99 years old, and Sarah, but I don't think he was a spring chicken.
oh. We don't know about Abraham's life. He was 75 years old when God, but
Correct.
I don't know his life before 75.
Right. The Torah is silent about that. That's true. There are, however, legends surrounding what about Abraham's earlier life. We can find them in Midrashim, etc., etc. Because that's, the question is, after all, why did God appear to Abraham at the tender age of 75? And what had happened in those 75 years? By the way, you know how old Moses was when God commissioned him to take the Jewish people out of Egypt.
No, how old?
Well, how old was he when he died?
120.
How many years wandering did they have in the desert?
Oh, 40 years.
If you subtract 40 from 120, what do you get?
Oh, okay. I understand now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. David, Herschela, do you have something you wanted to say?
I have two questions. One, medically, is the third day after surgery the worst day for a person?
Well, we have a few doctors here. Maybe they would be willing to answer.
And the second question has to do with warmth. Does warmth itself make it easier on a person to recover? Because normally when you go into a hospital and a person is, they keep the rooms relatively cool in the 60s rather than in the 70s or 80s or 90s or hundreds, which it could be, in the desert. So those are the two questions I have.
I believe they still keep warm blankets in hospitals. That in fact, having a warm blanket can be very, very comforting to a person.
That's true.
Anyway, Lanny or Morris, do you want to comment? I know Bob, unfortunately, his audio doesn't work, but would either of you be willing to comment on that? The third day, Lanny?
It's individual. It depends upon the individual. That's not necessarily 100% true, although many times after surgery, when you start moving around, which is the second or third day, it is more uncomfortable.
So I imagine it would also depend on the actual, condition that the person is going through. But obviously in those early stages of healing, I imagine it might be very uncomfortable and that the third day might represent, a turning point, in that initial response. I think of burns, for example, right? It takes a while. Although I guess it depends on the degree of the burn that you have.
That's a different animal.
Yeah, right. But here we're talking about cut surgery. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.